they don't have the A players and they're smartest person in the room, hardest working person in the room, making all the decisions. By tolerating B's and C's on your leadership team, you are cementing your permanent role in the Doom Loop Hall of Fame.
Welcome to Escape the CEO Doom Loop, where we talk with real-world leaders about the challenge of building great companies without losing your clarity, energy, or sanity. I'm John Ninkovich, joined by my co-host Glen Dall. Today, we're joined by Matt Dion, a former CEO turned metronome certified coach who's helping leadership teams scale without chaos. Over a 30-year career, Matt led marketing, operations, and strategy, fast-growth SaaS and tech firms, survived multiple downturns, and now helps others do the same. Matt, welcome to our show.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, excited to have you.
All right. We love having our clients on, and we're going to be really diversifying the audience. But what we love, guys like you, is that you're kind of like John and I in a sense of where you were an operator, right? You've run companies. And I think something unique that John and I didn't do is you actually were a client of Metronomics, right? You work with Shannon Susko as a coach.
Yeah.
And so you had that aspect of the system. And then now in the next chapter for you, you are a Metronomics coach. And so I think that's going to give us a unique conversation for you. We had Carl on, and we're going to have a couple other people as well who have that kind of perspective. And I think you're familiar with the book that John and I co-wrote with a couple of our other colleagues called The CEO Playbook, in which we interviewed a bunch of CEOs, and we came up with this concept called the CEO Doom Loop. So our podcast is called Escape the CEO Doom Loop. Before we jump in, do you want to give us a quick snapshot about who you are and a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'll give you a high level. So when I came out of university here in Vancouver, so I live in Vancouver, BC, Canada, and I grew up here and went to school here. And when I came out, I did an internship with Microsoft. Now, it kind of got me into the whole world of technology. And I was there for a year, had an amazing experience. I started with a startup that was just ended up being a rocket ship. And I really had no idea how lucky. I really won the first job lottery because it just was a 60-person company that grew to thousands and got acquired by SAP at the end.
Wow.
And so, I started pretty high up in a startup and then was able to stay, ride that wave. And so I was able to really just go, I want to run sales today. And so I was running a 140-person sales org and I was running marketing. So I got to try a bunch of roles. I didn't know what I didn't know back then. And I was very, very fortunate to have that experience. When it got big, I felt I wanted to get back into growth stage. I joined a startup with a friend and was head of marketing. Marketing is one of my passions. So that's a role that I really enjoy when I'm in a leadership role. And I got tapped to be a CEO. So I was a CEO for a few years and could talk about that. But through the 2007-8, financial crisis. And on the other side of that, I went back, got a bit burnt out from doing that. Didn't get out of the doom loop there. So went back into an operator role as a head of marketing for an e-commerce company. And that was a fun place to work for 6 or 7 years. And then I was tapped again to become a CEO of a marketing company. So I did that. And that was a lot better because I had frameworks, I had Metronomics, I had a coach. And exited that and was tapped by Shannon to start coaching full-time on what I'd been using now for a number of years, the Metronomics framework. So that's my story in the chat summary version.
That's
Thanks. Good.
awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah. So you were a CEO at what age for the first time?
35.
So 35. So is that right around 2008, right? That whole crash thing. So did you know when you took over as CEO, did you experience the doom loop? Were you in the doom loop? Did you realize when you were there, if you were there, what did that look like for you as a first-time CEO in the middle of a lot of turmoil back then in 2008?
Well, I joined right prior to the turmoil, right? So I'd come off this exciting ride with this company for 10 years and I wasn't feeling any kind of doom loop. If anything, it was the opposite. I had this sort of, probably just ignorance, right? Of what
Euphoria.
I was capable of. And yeah, exactly, right? And
ignorance is bliss.
I became, ignorance is totally bliss. And I encourage anyone who's in that situation to read the book, The Motive, Pat Lencioni's book about why you're a CEO, because I did it for all the wrong reasons. I mean, I felt my ego was healthy. Well, maybe not healthy, but I had a strong ego, right? Coming off of all these successes, and there you go. I'd made some money, and, for my age and my background, it was a lot of money, and I was on top of the world sort of thing, right? And then I went and joined my friend, and according to me, doing everything wrong, and I could do it way better. So, I joined the company because it was ego. I could be the smartest guy in the room. I could power through everything. I was the hardest worker. Like, all the things I know now are like big red flags, but I went into it with that. And, I was young and had energy, so I muscled through it. It was a public company, right? So my first CEO job was running a public company. It was horrendous at times. Well, yeah, Glenn, I know. Yeah, like your background is, and mine are similar in that aspect, right? And then the crisis hit. There was no more public money. Like, my investors called and said, "Yeah, no, we're done." And we weren't cash flow positive yet. So that was a jarring experience. That's when I came face to face with the doom loop and my own limitations and my own motivations and all of that stuff. That is right around the time when I did meet Shannon and met Metronomics, all of that. The timing was good at the end of the day, but that company, that was a humbling experience.
Yeah. So what did that feel like as you recognize now? Like, the same for me, and I know, John, you and I've talked about this, is that feeling of, hey, this is who I have to be as a CEO and having success, but then it turns, right? And thinking I had to solve it, I'd be the smartest guy in the room. And it sounds like you maybe found yourself in the doom loop, kind of thinking that when things turned on you.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because I had been part of a very strong team in that company prior for the 10 years. I was probably giving myself more credit than others, thinking I played a bigger part in the success of that company than I did. I can be the smartest, I can work the hardest at all that kind of stuff. Now, when we look at what I have coined my framework, the CEO freedom framework, right? Dan Martell, buy back your time, being in that quadrant of high things that fill you up and are the most impact. I certainly wasn't there. I was everywhere. And what I underestimated was that my own just human limitations of energy and all that kind of stuff. I got into it pretty difficult emotionally and mentally because I was at that pain line and I pushed and pushed and pushed. And it just, when the market crashed and everything, it was hard. That's when I kind of hit a bunch of those limits and go, yeah, I got to do something different here.
How long did it take, Matt? So you take over as a CEO first time. I've been in the same spot. It's kind of like all about me. Like, I can do this. I got this. Everything starts going sideways and you realize, oh, well, this is pretty humbling. How long sitting in the CEO seat before you have that realization? Like, whew.
It was about 2 years. There was a little bit of artificial signs of success early because the markets were hot and the broker that was kind of had all their clients in on this public company was really wanting to see it be successful. It was a financial play for them, right? Driving the stock price. And so they were willing to write checks and invest. They were not software people. They were not operators, right? They were investors, public company investors. Their motivations and their knowledge and there was not alignment there on core values, let's just say. It was okay at the beginning, but it was artificial, and then when the money ran out, here I am now having to make payroll and having, 25 employees. Yeah, that's when it changed, right? And it changed really fast because it was a crash. You remember the market. It was a big crash and funds dried up and everything. And so it was a pretty it was almost like in terms of how quickly it hit us was like a COVID. Like, wow, this is unexpected and massive and global. And it's a huge, everything has to change, right? So
what did you do to pull out? Were you able to, I guess is the first question, right?
Yeah, well, I did. One thing I was able to do, and I didn't know the 8-player framework and all of that we use now. I knew it sort of kind of intuitively. I was doing some of that. So I had put some really strong mentors, advisors on my board. And so, guys that are good friends with me to this day. And I did have 8 players on my team. Now, it was a lot of trial and error. So I hired a lot of B's and C's along the way because I didn't have the framework, right? But I did end up with some strong 8 players around me. And so I was able to meander out of it, I guess is the best way to say. We were able to just cut back the cost. And actually, I was near the end of that is when I met Shannon, and her and I were on a board together called Ace Tech, the Academy for CEOs of Tech Companies. So it was a massive, like 100-person organization of all CEOs that were dealing with this stuff together, right? We were all using Scaling Up and Vern Harnish and all that. We had some of the tools. I realized that for me, I was going to, bad things were going to happen to me health-wise and mental health-wise if I kept down this path. So I said, okay, I got to get out of this. When you're running a public company, it's almost like joining the mafia. Like, oh my gosh, I'm in it. Like, how do I get out of this? And so I just had to, you don't, yeah. But
or you do it is, but it's very painful.
Yeah. So I did what I felt was the right thing for me. And it's a long story, but I was able to navigate through that crisis, get the company out of debt, sell the shell of the company to another investor that was able to actually do something with it. And the shareholders did okay by it. So it wasn't a home run, but it wasn't a complete crash and burn. I would say with the framework coming in at the right time, and after, getting some humility and leaning on some other people to help me, gave it a better outcome than it would have been had I not discovered those things.
So how long does that whole process take you? And then on the back end of it, you went in as, hey, I'm a CEO, I can do this kind of thing. And then you get in the seat, and it's way different when you're in the seat than, hey, I'm going to be a CEO, right? What were kind of your learnings that first time being a CEO? What were the ahas for you in that moment, or reflecting on that? And you're like, wow.
When you read the motive, all the things that were in there were my ahas during that moment. So that's why I loved reading that book. Because I'm like, oh, geez, I wish I had this before. It was
just so
real
quick,
why am I doing this?
I was going to ask, I mean, we've read the motive, we know it. I've had all my clients read it, but when you say, things from the motive, what is that lesson that's in the motive that you learned?
Yeah. Well, my reason for going into it was about me, right? Like I liked the idea of being a CEO and the title and that, like how that's going to look on my LinkedIn and like I'm the CEO and it's cool. And after the end of that, I've changed my tune a little bit, but coming out of that, I was like, this is the worst job in the world. Why would anyone do this on purpose, right? This is like a prison sentence. It's so hard. And, the lonely job at the top and all that stuff. So I hit that head on, like, this really isn't a cool job at all. Like compared to what I've done in the past where I was having fun and making money and there was some lightness and joy to my life. This was like, it really felt like a prison sentence to some extent. So I'm like, you really have to be passionate about why you're doing the job. And I did not. I was brought into a public company just solving first world problems, someone else's broken company that I was tapped on to fix. And so I was not aligned to the core values. I was not passionate about the mission. None of that alignment was there. I was in it for all the wrong reasons. And so those were the aha moments. And when I read the motive, I'm like, yeah. So when I took my second job, I really was more like, am I doing this? I know how hard the job is. I know what's involved now. So I really went into that second CEO role with that clarity about why am I doing it.
What are the differences, Matt CEO 1.0 and Matt CEO 2.0? What are the differences? Because you had matured a bit then, right? You had some hard knocks, you learned some lessons.
Yeah. Not that I'm ever going to do it again, but I would just say that 2.0 was better than 1.0. 3.0 would be way better than 2.0 because I didn't do everything right going into 2.0.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
That's why I'm a coach now. So I can help my clients be 3.0 is what I want it to be. But I would say that the things that were different between 1.0 and 2.0 was definitely I understood my own limitations. I did not want to be roll up the sleeves, executing, doing everything. Like the second time was also a turnaround. I'm definitely a sucker for punishment, but I recognized I have all C players here. And so B's and C's, and I needed to get A players. And so I raised some capital. I positioned things with the board. I brought in advisors that could help. I did build out a team of A players. And so that was good. I learned a lot of lessons around, clarity of where you're going, having some strategy, daily huddles, weekly meetings. I probably could have been better on scorecards. I didn't have real clear scorecards at the time, but I did have a team of A players. I did have an execution system. We had a strategy. So I would say the early stages of what, I fully coach on now were in place. I'd say in a kind of a 1.0 level. That was a big difference. Coaching with a system, with a framework. And then eventually I joined a roundtable. And had Shannon as my coach. That's night and day from 1.0 to 2.0.
Yeah. Matt, one of the things that we work with our clients on a lot at the CEO level is probably their number one most important priority on their scorecard is building that healthy, cohesive team at the top of the organization. And you had talked about, and I see this with a lot of my clients, they started and they now run an architectural firm and they wanted to be an architect and now they're running a company. They wanted to be a salesperson, now they're running a company, right? I started wanting to do something in a specific area and now I'm doing something different. You talked about your love of business development and marketing. So in your second iteration of being a CEO, were you still running those functions or were you building that as a part of the team and handing those things off, or what'd that look like for you in the second iteration?
Yeah, well, in the first iteration, I wasn't thinking about an accountability chart and a function chart and key roles and stuff. It was sort of like me and some people doing, but working really hard together.
Yeah.
Playing sports by just running out on the field and just going for it, like 5-year-olds. So in the second one, I was, we need a goalie and we need forwards and we need roles, we need positions, and I wasn't using top grading it, which that would have helped because although I was aspiring to A players, it was a lot of mishires, right? So hire slow, fire fast. I was using that. And I did end up getting A players, but it was more painful than it needed to be because I still had the 50% hit rate on them. So having the A players, having clarity on their roles, even though I didn't have scorecards the way we think about them now. So I wasn't doing the roles. I wasn't running sales. I wasn't running marketing. I wasn't being the product manager for the product. I had key people in those roles, and that made a big difference.
So Matt, you talked about before about if you were CEO 3.0, assuming you're not going to be, but who knows, what would that next iteration look like, do you think? What would you aspire to be as Matt 3.0 CEO?
I would hire a coach day one, and I would just fully put in the framework, and I would do my freedom framework, what brings me passion and is the most important thing. And I'd be like, I'm operating from that quadrant from day one. So I'm building out my team of A players with really clear scorecards. And then I would sit down with all the tools that we have to define strategy. What's our unique and valuable position in the market? Create the swim lanes. I've done so many of those self-awareness things with my clients, and I participate as well, that I think, 3.0 would have more self-awareness than 2.0 and 1.0. And so I would share that with my coach and say, hey, this is the stuff where I need to grow. Please hold me accountable and help me with that stuff. So I would say just be more self-aware, structures, systems, a coach, all those things. So I think 3.0 would have a much greater chance of building an awesome company and having an amazing life.
So if someone came and said, Matt, God, you're amazing. I heard you on that podcast and I want to hire you to run my company. Would you step back into the seat, into the role?
No. Well, I shouldn't say no. I'd have to know more. Like, what do you mean? What kind of company? I mean, honestly, if I felt I could contribute to, I'm pretty purpose driven now, right? So if I felt like I really thought that I could make a difference to a company that was going to have some massive impact on the world, then I probably, for the right reasons, might say yes in that case. But because it's a job, because the paycheck's good, because of all those other things, no way. I love what I do. I love coaching other CEOs, and I feel like I was sort of everything that I've learned to date is I've been brought here right now to do this. So that'd be a hard sell to get me to do that. It'd have to be some really, really strong purpose that tipped it over.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. I guess one of the questions that I'd like to ask is, as you think about being a CEO and kind of that letting go, it was interesting. Carl talked about this in his interview where he talked about when he went from being a founder to the CEO, was that when he was a founder, he made 95% of the decisions. And when he became the CEO, and this is through Shannon's help and the Metronomics coaching process or framework was helpful, that he was making 5% of the decisions when he started to operate as a CEO. When you think about that in your journey as a CEO, where were you in the decision-making criteria? What percentage of decisions do you think we're making as a CEO? Maybe version 1 versus 2, and what that look like and why was it different the second time?
It got a little bit better from 1.0 to 2.0. It would probably get exponentially better with 3.0 because so 1.0, I was just making all the decisions. I would say that I was, as a kind of innate conflict avoider, I know that about myself from early on. I wouldn't say that I was always on the cohesive system, having those really healthy disagreements and that healthy conflict. I was probably more of a, let's make harmony here and everyone gets along in 1.0. And so in 2.0, I got it, by having A players, and it was definitely more collaborative and more conversations. And I was still weak on really mining for conflict and really having uncomfortable conversations up front and not kicking them down the road. From now my transition into a coach, and what I see every day with coaches is avoiding those hard conversations is, that's where that gold is, right? Like looking for the conflict points, looking for that tension, because there's something there, right? And really leaning in and unpacking that stuff and having those conversations. I wasn't skilled at that, on building a cohesive team that can do that, or even my own process around having those conversations with people and using that language and that. So I've developed that a lot since then. And so at 3.0, that would be more in place. And that would be the stuff that I would have to work on with my coach. I've gone from 100% of the decision-making in a 3.0, hypothetical 3.0 CEO. I would try and be like, I don't want to make any decisions. I want to have the A players that make the decisions.
So what you're saying is that mining for conflict in the middle of those interactions with your team, right? You would sweep that underneath the rug, right? Or kick the can down the road and not deal with that, which I get it. And the reality is those things never go away. As a coach, are you able to go in and dive into the conflict and mine for the conflict more as a coach than you were when you were the CEO? And if so, why is that different?
I guess being aware of it. That's the first thing. Honestly, like when I started coaching, getting that feedback pretty quickly from other coaches and from my clients and that, and just looking at where things were coming up and analyzing situations and stuff like that and going, the discovery, that is not something to be avoided. That is data to be listened to and inspected and unpacking without judgment and all of that stuff. So it would like realizing that was like, a scary, chaotic thing to avoid versus like, oh my gosh, there's some gold there and let's go towards it. And obviously I'm not on the field with them. I'm on the side. That's what a coach is. And so of course it's going to be easier to have that conversation than being the CEO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a huge part of what we did. For me, that's a big difference I see is that I'm on the sidelines and I'm watching the game. I know I see the entire game, but I'm not playing the game. And I don't have the same emotionality of someone playing the game. Mm-hmm. This isn't my company. I'm not employed by the CEO. We work at our will. And so I think I really found that's a big difference of seeing it. And also, I think you bring up a really great point about understanding that in order to build a really cohesive team, you have to build the trust. And in order to have that trust, you've got to have vulnerability. I never really understood that concept as a CEO.
Yeah. And I think being on the sidelines, there's less risk, right, to being vulnerable, I think, as a coach. You don't have as much risk as being an employee or even being a CEO. It puts us in a stronger position to model that kind of behavior, I think.
Just the two of you as coaches now, since we're on this topic, what do you find when you're working with a leadership team? If you come in and you see that they're not a cohesive team, that there's egos at play and they won't get into the conflict or the important issues, right? There's elephants in the room. What tools or exercises or how do you use to get those teams to address those issues?
I was going to ask Matt a similar question, which is when you're working with a client and you're facilitating a session, how often or how frequently do you have to stop because you have to mine for conflict versus moving ahead and just getting through the agenda, which I think is the essence of what kind of Glen is asking, right? And I see that a lot. It doesn't make sense to plow through an agenda if there's these other real issues that are beneath the surface. And I think that what I find when you do that, when you really bring it up, and you can sense it from the team, you can tell even the nonverbals you get from some of the people in the room, like there's something there. And I think that we have to have the responsibility to ask deeper clarifying questions to really unearth an issue that's there. And I'll tell you, it's frequently that my agendas get screwed up for the day because we've got real issues around cohesion that we really have to talk about. For us to go do strategy work would really be, I don't think, of the best use of the client's time because they had really the ability to work cohesively as a team, which we all know is the most important thing. Let's not move past that to go do this other stuff. So I literally have had days. It's really just been dealing with the real issues that are creating resentment, frustration, lack of consistent culture, and that will happen. There is some nuance to how I do this stuff and how I do it with different clients based on the CEO and how I think the CEO will deal in those kind of situations. Some I can jump right into that, and I know that's welcome. There's others that I have to handle a little bit differently. Maybe have a private conversation with them at a break to talk about that. But it's really like I find myself running at that stuff a lot. Like, I just don't want to go past it. Those are the real issues. And when I had a coach working with me in my businesses, that's what he did for me. And those were the most important things. He would bring up stuff that, frankly, maybe I couldn't bring up to my leadership team or my partners, that he would unearth, and it would make it okay to talk about it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I adapt it depending on the situation. I can think of sort of three big buckets. One is you go in and you feel like you're an emergency room doctor, right? Like, oh, there's an issue here, right? And like, this is two founders that are just butting. It's like, there's almost no point doing anything.
Yeah.
I am not going to make any progress here. They're not going to make any progress until we address this thing. And so that sometimes you just gotta say, hey, I have to be upfront here and talk about this issue now, because nothing else matters. So that's the one situation. And there's the other ones where everything seems okay. So you just get rolling, and then you start going, okay. You start to see things, you see symptoms, and you can hopefully get the CO to see the same thing you're seeing and bring in the tools and, the scorecards and the A player and cohesion, and the C players put their hand up and say, hey, this isn't for me, and all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And then the ideal ones are where the team is, they're healthy. They're good. They're at least 5 out of 10s on the pyramid. And you're like, great, let's take it even higher. Let's go to the next level. You're a nice cohesive team of A players. Let's strengthen it. Right. So yeah, I think different tactics depending on how severe the cohesive problem is, and also the personality of the CEO too, right? What's their awareness of it, and how fast can you push them, to see it?
Have either one of you guys, when you started work with a new client, started working with that client and the whole leadership team is an A team? Has anybody had that happen to them yet?
No, not me.
I haven't either.
Yeah, you know what? I would say I have one.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been working with them for 2 years, and there's been no changes to the leadership team. And there's been no, there's been one change to the leadership team. So that was a healthy move. So I would say, honestly, I'm not pushing them.
Yeah,
I'm not pushing them to change, to swap anyone out. But it's a pretty unique situation. So yeah, but sure.
Can we unpack that a little bit? So just for people listening, does it mean they're an A player team if nobody's left in 2 years?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But me with the A player framework and having them do the assessment and create scorecards, there's been no turnovers. So I would say they do have a 100% A player leadership team now, as in it's the same team as 2 years ago. So yeah, no, absolutely. Measuring your success by turnover is like the worst metric you can use.
I agree.
Yeah.
Trying to think of any of my new clients are looking at themselves right now thinking like, wait, yeah, we're not A players? No.
Yeah.
Well, every new client I start with, on the very first day, I say, look, this team might be different. I don't know yet. They haven't seen you play in the game yet. But experience tells me that if we're working together a few years from now, this team won't be the same team. The team in the room here 2 years from now won't be the same team. And I've shared this story several times of one of my clients that with the first session I worked with them, I think it's been 5 years now. There were 12 people invited. They're like, oh, here, this is our senior leadership team. It's 12 people. Like, okay, let's see how this pans out, right? 10 people showed up. The CEO didn't show up, and the CFO didn't show up. And now that team is down to, well, actually, it was down to 7, and we had an acquisition. So they're bumped. We're going to be back up to maybe up to 8. But I think only 2 people that were in the room the first day are still on the leadership team. And one was the COO, is now the CEO.
Yeah. Actually, I will add on to that story. So the company that's had the leadership team in place for 2 years has had growth and profit in that. But now the next phase of growth, they will need to add A players, because the current team, even though they're A players in their roles, the company now requires some new roles that those people will not be the people to go into those roles. So there will be a requirement to add to the team. Yeah.
I think it's an interesting kind of conversation, because if you think about it, we've all been doing this for a bit now, right? Coaching organizations, and we've working with multiple clients over the years. So if you think about collectively between the three of us, how many clients that we've actually worked with over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, wherever it's been collectively, right? The numbers get to be pretty decent size. And what we're saying is that out of all those clients we've worked with, one of them had an A team that's those same players are together. So if you put the math
So that might be
to it,
one out of maybe 100, right? If we
it's
look
a
at all the companies
it's a
we work
small
with.
number, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
Yeah.
really
totally.
interesting.
Well, and I think, Matt, you touched on it before, because if as a CEO or a CEO or owner leader doesn't have the framework or the thought about being diligent and curated on what is an A player for the functional role, and also the culture at the growth stage for the company, and then add on top of that to be a senior leader, like, what do you need from a senior leader? That's not just being a functional leader, it's being a part of a senior leadership of a team. Those are all different things. And
Yeah.
Well,
it's an evolution, right? The company keeps growing and needing more. It's like
100%.
going to the gym, starting with 10 pounds weight. If you stay at 10-pound weights, you're not going to improve. So now you got to move to the 15-pound weight. So that's the bar gets higher, right? If the company's being successful, it will outgrow the current capabilities, and people need to up-level themselves, or you bring in new people, or new roles get created out of, that they didn't need before that require an A player.
The reality is I think if you're doing it right, it gets harder to make the team. Like it's any sports team, as it gets better, it's just harder to make the team. And I think we see that, right? I see that with my clients now. They've been doing this for a while and they're getting good at the player stuff and the cohesion. Those leaders get it and they talk about it now. Like it's just harder to join the organization because the standards, expectations are so much higher than they were before we started doing this work. It's really consistent the way that all works out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you go to that sports analogy. If the team that you played with that won the high school championship is not the same team that's going to win the college, and certainly not the same team that's going to go to the pros and win a Super Bowl, right? The stakes keep getting higher and higher. And people have different stages of their life, right? Some of them don't want to grow beyond a certain level. And that's fine. That it's all good. And it's all about, I think, as a successful head of the company, about being able to understand that, and also, right, and manage that all the way through the growth trajectory of a company. But Matt, like you've talked about Matt 1.0 as a CEO, 2.0, right? But now you're working with companies. If you were to really kind of step back and say, how often do you come into working with a company and just you see in that CEO the behaviors that you, as a former CEO, say back like, wow, I see those same kinds of behaviors, like the doom loop behaviors in the CEOs you work with? And how do you, as now a coach, recognizing that, address that?
Yeah, well, I would say if probably the 1.0, I wouldn't see as much of that because I probably wouldn't have reached out for a coach back then. I think I might filter them out when talking to them about whether I'm a good fit for them or not. Like 1.0 is probably very uncoachable and very,
all right. Well, let's dig into that.
Yeah.
Why would you choose not to, as a coach? Why would you not work with Matt 1.0?
I don't know if Matt 1.0 was coachable, and I don't think the business was actually a good business. And Matt 1.0 had very, very little money, so couldn't afford my fees. So there's probably a few reasons why I wouldn't work with 1.0. Now, Matt 2.0, I'd say a slightly different story. Having been the CEO that evolved from 1.0 to 2.0, and in my head going, okay, this is what my ideal CEO self would look like. It stands out really clearly to me, like things that I wouldn't be able to see in myself, but it's easy to give advice and not hear advice. It's that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I can see it. I can see it when it shows up because it's what I would identify in myself and what I would want to fix, or what I want someone to tell me that I should work on.
So what do you see? What are those things? If you think about the top 2 or 3 things that when you walk in a new client, that you can kind of see, from one being a metronomics coach that's certified in the methodology, 2, you've been a user of the methodology and you've been a CEO a couple of times. Like when you go in and see a new client, like what are the things that you see that get you into the doom loop that they should really be addressing?
Yeah, well, the one that stands out for me, because it's one of my growth areas, is avoiding conflict. Usually think about it, when you have an A player, they usually know these are not A players. They're using language, they're using body language. They know it's not an A player. Why aren't they dealing with it? All the difficult conversations and hard work and stuff that has to happen. So avoiding conflict, avoiding uncomfortable conversations. I see that a lot. And then the holding on to, when I do the freedom framework and I'm like, you want to be in this quadrant, but you're doing a lot of things over here that you feel you have to do, but they don't bring you joy, and you could get someone else to do that. There's resistance there. No, I need to do this. I facilitated this session with 30 CEOs and I put up that 2x2, the joy axis and the impact axis. And like, are y'all working up here? None of them were. Well, how come? You're the CEOs. You get to pick. Well, there's things blocking people from being in that quadrant, right? And so that stuff shows up, like all of the reasons why they're not working on the things that bring them joy, that have the most impacts. So that stands out for sure.
The holding on thing, is it things that they've done, things that the organization's always done, or is it also holding on to people?
Yeah, they're all connected, right? So it's they hold on to the B players so that then now they don't trust that they can have that B player do that thing, so that they do it, because they just don't have someone in there that, if all the things that they didn't want to be doing, but the company still needed to be done, was in the hands of somebody they truly believed was an A player and could just have it handled for them, they would do it. So I think it's connected, like tolerating B's and C's and then protecting them by stepping in and doing that work for them themselves, which is personally draining for them. I think that's the biggest factor. But I also think that in a small company, they wear a lot of hats because of just that's the reality and the financial. But it's funny because I've worked with startups that do a bunch of the roll up their sleeves, do the stuff, and then they go get a $10 million A round and they've got money to hire people. And I'm like, they're still reviewing press releases and working on website content. I'm like, why are you doing that? And they're like, oh, only I can do it right. So now it's become like reality-based thing to some story they've got in their head that they should be doing that for whatever reason. They're the only ones that can, or that's I don't want to lose control of that because it's so important, and all these stories they tell themselves, but it's not really based on reality anymore once they have the money to hire A players to do those things.
Yeah.
Well, how would you answer that question, John, in your experience?
I think for me, it's the holding on of people. I see the same thing. It's the inability to have hard conversations that don't have to be hard, but they're hard. The content of them is hard. I tell my CEOs a lot, you're too nice. This niceness factor that I have with a lot of clients I work with, I don't know, maybe I attract them, I don't know. But they're just so nice. And it's just like, all right, but you're going to be dealing with this issue if you don't have a real conversation about it a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now. And it's almost like they just are getting kicked in the teeth constantly and having a hard time really having those hard conversations. And then I think making those hard decisions. I do see some of what Matt's talking about where people don't want to give up certain things they've been doing for a long time for, I think, a lot of different reasons. But more what I see is not willing to have the hard people conversations and then take action on the hard people actions that I need to take consistently. I see that really everywhere that I go.
Yeah.
You talk about the stories that we all tell ourselves, and with our clients certainly do, is the one here is like, well, we can't afford A players. But I think in that discussion, it's like reminding, like the definition of an A player is the top 10% of the pool at which the salary we can afford to pay them. And so I challenge one of my clients I worked with that had a non-A player on their team. And he finally, like, we were really drilling down to it. I'm like, why not have the conversation? He goes, you know what? I think I'm afraid of them. And I'm afraid to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Totally.
And and then it finally did, using the process, using the scorecards and the discussion, the process. And like, now in hindsight, of course, the CEO's like, oh my God, you were so right from way back long ago. And I can't believe it took so long, and the difference now. And I think we hear that all the time.
Yeah. It's like an awakening.
Yeah. But I also think the money conversation's an interesting one, because if someone's like, oh, well, we pay 150 grand for this role and a really good person in our industry is 200 grand and we don't have that, that's a rounding error. The difference in the salary, it's if they looked at the total cost of ownership, if you call it that, I don't know what HR people call it, but the total impact, the total cost of drag on the rest of the team, the false hires, the rehiring and all that stuff. I mean, the cost, you can't afford not to have A players. The A players, the cheapest, form of salary you're going to have.
100%. Yeah. Well, the other thing, John, you worked at Gallup. What is the number one reason people leave their jobs?
Well, their boss, they have a
Their
leader that doesn't
boss.
create a great environment for them. It's not money. They got a boss that's doesn't know them,
Yeah.
doesn't create a trusting relationship, doesn't nurture them, doesn't create clarity of expectations, right? It's all that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's ultimately the doom loop is CEOs who aren't able to build that A-player team,
Yeah.
right? And if they can't, they talk about they blame the salary, they blame the people, but ultimately many times it's really about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they don't have the A players and they're smartest person in the room, hardest working person in the room, making all the decisions. I mean, that is by tolerating B's and C's on your leadership team, you are cementing your permanent role in the Doom Loop Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I
That's
love
funny.
that. That's a great idea. You can tell you have a marketing mind, John. We need to think
Yeah,
about
I
that
like that a
Doom Loop
lot.
Hall of Fame. You
I'm
can get a
gonna write that
trophy
down.
for
If
it.
you don't have
I
A
know.
players, like you're not a CEO, you're a hostage. You're a hostage to the company, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I interviewed a CEO for the next edition of the book, and he had founded the company, I don't know, I think 18 or 26 years ago. I can't remember exactly. And it's closing on like a $200 million company, and they've transformed the business and all these things. We were talking about that, how he always needed to be very diligent about his senior leadership team. And he said, it never effing stops. He said, just when I think I have the right team, we go
That's
to the
true.
next stage of growth and I find out, nope, it's not the right team for that stage. And he just said, it never stops.
It
Yep,
doesn't.
that's the job.
Yeah. Or somebody
Infinite
that's
game.
good leaves, right? And then you're back to finding another A player. Yeah. It's a constant journey, but it's like being a
Yeah.
general manager of a football team. You're constantly looking, do you have the right people, the right players on your squad?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And it's the right
Yeah,
players. The right player on another team may not be the right player for your team based on
for
your
sure.
culture and strategy, right? That team dynamic. That's an important part.
For sure.
Yeah, well, but I think it's that endless, like this, it doesn't ever stop. And even if everything's going well in the company, you got the frameworks, it's still a big grind, a big push. And so I think that's where you really got to be asking yourself as the CEO, why am I doing this? Because if you're not driven by something higher than just those surface level
Yeah.
things, then that stress is really, the pressure is going to get to you. You need to have that passion and that alignment, that purpose to drive through the continued push.
That's a really great point.
Yeah.
It goes back to the motive.
I have a question. So what happens though you start working with a company and they're not going to do that? They just, for whatever reason, they've been working for the while and they're willing to tolerate B's and C's in their company, which by default means they're not an A-player CEO.
Yep.
Do you still work with them? Do you just do your best with what you've got to work with there, or can C's and B's become A's, or no? Do you have the time for that? But this is the CEO. They own the company, say, and they have all the time they want. When a CEO maybe hits their max and they don't want to go anywhere, and it's good enough for them.
A great question, Matt. I think when I first started coaching, all revenue was good revenue when you start coaching, right? And you go from running a company and working somewhere else, having a W-2 paycheck, and then you get going doing this, and you got to make commerce happen. So I think you do whatever you have to get going. But I think you guys are on the same path in your journey, is that as you start doing this work and as you get more proficient at it, right? And I think that every year builds on your knowledge and your ability to help clients. There's this constant progression of learning, getting better as a coach year after year. I don't even think I'm close to where I'm going to be in hopefully 5 or 10 years, but I think as you get better at those things and you realize who are the clients you do the best work with, and that's different, I think, for all of us, the kind of client we want
Right.
to work with. But I think in the essence, it's people that want to be coached. I'm at a point now where if they don't want to be coached, if they don't want to take the advice that we use, I say this all the time, like we're using kind of the best business ideas and learnings from the best business leaders, authors that have been out there. Like we're not recreating anything. This is all the stuff we do has been created in this great, unbelievable framework. And we get to use our own personal experience in that framework to help deliver those results. So it's not like we're going and creating this stuff that never been done before. It's just the stuff we do works. And so, yeah, for me, it's really working with people that want to do the work is important for me. It takes some time to get to that point where you can build your client base to the point where you can start to do those things. But I think it's essential. I think it's what gives you're excited to go see them. You're excited to be with them that day, and you're excited at the end of the day, like the work you got done. And it's not like you're pushing a rock uphill. It just feels good a lot more than it doesn't feel good, I think. Right. Not that you don't have days where you have sessions with great clients, with great leadership teams, that sometimes there's days that there's some conflict or difficulty. But
do you think if they're coachable and they're willing and they are doing the work, do you think anyone can become an A-player CEO? I mean, not anyone, but if they're already a CEO and they're open and take the tools and do the work.
Oh, John, this goes back to our Jim Collins table discussion.
It does go back to it.
Jim said he believes, and he said he's evolved over the years. He's gotten his percentage. He said greater than 75%. Maybe not head of company, but can be great level 5 leaders if you're familiar with Jim Collins, right?
Yeah. 75% can be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although the huge caveat is that if they have the willingness and is it the humbleness, or how did he describe that?
Will and humility.
Humility, yes.
Right.
Will and
humility. Kind of like the ideal team player stuff from Lancioni. If they've got that, then 75% of them can be level 5 leaders. Okay, that's cool.
And I don't think our table didn't quite agree with that, right, John?
No.
It's good discussion, though.
Yeah. We're going to talk some more about it next week. So we'll
but the reason I asked is because, when a CEO says that to us, when they won't get rid of a B player on their team or a C player, they're like, well, I'm going to work with them more. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to spend the time and make them an A player. And we'd say, no, you don't have time for that. So when it's that same conversation between you and the CEO, is it different? Or do you have to have that same brutal facts and,
I mean, Matt, what you just said is like, okay, what's your plan? What are you going to do? Are you going to coach that B player every day? Does that player know it? And I've had so many instances that once the CEO has said, you know what, they adopt the process. I'm going to do that. I'm going to sit down. We're going to review the scorecard, right? We're going to have that discussion, because the thing I love most about the scorecards is when we sit down and we do the coaching reviews with scorecards, right? And that both parties come to the table. They've set examples, pushes a discussion that normally doesn't happen. Because, right, as we talked, could be a difficult conversation. Almost always both parties emerge saying, wow, that was really good. I mean, didn't understand the expectations. I thought I was doing a good job. I didn't know. And I've had so many times that level of having those conversations, the player themselves exits, because they realize, there's finally is true accountability, not just the talk of accountability. I had a CEO and they started off on scorecards. I'm like, well, right now, let's hammer out a scorecard for the CEO. And the CEO, on the way back to his company after the session, he called me, he said, I really don't qualify to be the CEO. It was interesting.
I find CEOs often will say that in sessions. They're like, well, I'm not even sure I'm an A-player CEO, to be honest, right? I
do hear that too.
But A-players will say that too, right? That's the humility part of it.
I think that's okay, actually. Yeah, I mean, if they said, hey, I'm a A-player CEO, I'd be like, oh, okay. That means you're a level 5. I'm a level 5 leader.
Yeah.
Well, Jim Collins used that example. He goes, if someone comes
then
over
your
and says,
humility, that would instantly knock you out, right?
Right. I'm a level 5 leader. I just wanted
I know it.
Your question about, do we continue working with them? And I'd really like John, because one of the things I gauge on is, am I excited or am I looking forward to a session with them? Do I believe in what they're doing? Do I believe their heart's in the right place? And can I take them, when I leave them at the end of the day, do I believe they're in a better place and they made progress? Like, that's my yardstick. And because I certainly still work with people like, no, they resisted, and all the stories make up the stories. Well, who's going to do the work? Or what? Here's the one. Oh, I'm just worried about the culture. People are going to start quitting. They're going to think we're in bad shape if we let too many people go, or if we let this person go, because we just let so-and-so go.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just making up stories. But if I really enjoy them and I think I'm getting them to a better place.
How about you, Matt? What's your answer?
Well, I think the 3HAG is want. It's a want, right? I mean, I don't think 10x thinking is always about 10x revenue or 10x profit.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
I have clients that say, I want to sort of plateau and have more time back, or maybe turn my business over to a family member, or I want to leave a legacy of just, they don't need the 10x growth of the revenue or the profit. Maybe the financial, the 10x is in some other area of a legacy or satisfaction or something like that. I think it's want based. Like, what do you want? If you're the CEO and you're not able to, it's what do you want? And can I help you get there? And if that's the case, and all those other things, like I like working with you and all that, then I'm fine with that too. I don't necessarily view it like a sports team performance. There's a gold medal and only one winner. It's what does winning look like for you? And can I help you be the winner in your world?
Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
So,
Definitely agree with that.
yeah.
I think the other part of it too is that we have to be careful not to put our pace on top of them.
Yes.
Right.
So-
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some clients that could go really fast, and that's fun and exciting, and we have others that are, I think, just as wanting of the help, but like this is a lot for them, and we're teaching them a lot of stuff that they aren't not familiar with, and so I think we have to be careful that, all right, how can we put the right stuff in over time, kind of meet them where they're at, and maybe it's a little bit of tortoise on the hare, but they're continuing to make progress. I think that ties into what Glen's talking about. Are they continue to move the ball down the field? I think that's an important part of, are we working with the right people?
Yeah.
Well, and I
absolutely.
think, and reframing, making sure that 10X is a really large concept instead of numerical, right? Because honestly, if I could get someone from 85% execution in all the quadrants to they're just in that quadrant, making 5% of the decisions with a team of A players, regardless of revenue, profit, growth.
Right.
That's 10X. That's 10X shift in their well-being and their whatever unlock in their lives, right? So to me, that's great movement, regardless of the numbers, right?
Yeah. I'm reading Brad Giles' new book, which is titled Bigger Isn't Better, Better is Better. And I think that ties in really well to the 10X concept of, it's 10X is about, can you be 10X better? Can you create that much more impact? I've seen it happen with my clients. I know even in my life, if we focus on being better for the right reasons, then the revenue, the profitability, the good things almost always follow that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. They're the kind of consequences of getting that stuff right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, man. I love that. Because it's not, the 10X concept isn't multiply your revenue times 10. And that's your goal. It's like, no.
Not always.
All right. Well, what do you think, John? Do you want to ask Matt our signature last question?
Here's our closing signature question, 3 to 4 minute response. If you were writing the CEO playbook, what 3 non-negotiable practices would you talk to other CEOs about?
100% A-player leadership team. That shift into that quadrant, or 85% execution to 10% execution, spending the bulk of your time coaching, working on culture, personal development. So that personal shift of stuff.
Okay.
Working on the business versus in the business.
Yeah. I would say the third one is that the motive, stuff in the motive, just having real clarity on why you do what you do. Those would be my 3.
And fourth would be hire a coach.
Man.
Well, foosball tables. No, hire a coach, then foosball tables. Yeah.
That's foosball tables.
For sure. I guess I should have said hire a coach, number 1. I'm not very doing a good job here, biz dev, am I? Well, obviously you need a coach. I think that's a given. So, yeah.
The funny thing, Matt, is Glen and I have talked about this. Like, Glen, you had a coach a little bit, an EOS coach?
Well, I had an EOS implementer. That was the reason why I didn't go into becoming an EOS implementer professionally when I decided to do this, is because EOS implementer was really good, but was like helping us install a system. It was almost what it was. And where I really, and Matt, you used this word before, lonely. I was a lonely and frustrated CEO. And one of the things I needed a coach for was someone who I could go to that I could really trust, that I didn't work for or that didn't work for me, and who understood and appreciated the pressures of what I was going through, right? And I was a public company CEO as well. And I never had that person. I just remember so many times just being in my office, closing the door and just putting my head on the desk and just like almost pounding it. I really would. I mean, I was just like, God, I just wish I had someone I could trust and talk to. So that really guided me to become this coach that I am versus an EOS implementer. In addition to that, I got stuck on strategy. And so what I love about what we do, it really is ultimately getting our clients to that place of where they truly have a real strategy. And then everything guides towards that. Get a coach. Yeah, we do absolutely do that. Because I was actually talking to, at some point, someone tempted me with this offer to, hey, we should come run our company. And the first thing I was going to tell them as a non-negotiable was, you're going to have to hire me a coach. And I said, I don't know if it's going to be John or Matt, but
Yeah, I would definitely, if that 3.0 hypothetical CO job came my way, that would be a non-negotiable in my comp. You always
Yeah.
have to pay for a
Yeah.
coach for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And someone set me straight, right? God, we all get so in our head.
I agree 100%. Like, that was one of the most impactful things for me professionally is having a coach.
I wish I'd had that. Maybe it was the humbleness I didn't have, or I thought it was selfish to get a coach. I
Did
thought
you?
like,
Mm.
yeah. I don't know what screwed up logic in my head at that point in time that made me think that, but invest a couple $1 million in machinery, sure. Get the maintenance plan for it. Of course you would. Why would you not get the maintenance plan for that? Because you don't want it to break down, but apply the same concept to the CEO. Like,
Yeah,
oh
totally.
no, don't get the maintenance plan. They can figure it out on their own.
It's a good analogy. Yeah.
Matt, this has been amazing.
Yeah, that's been great. Thanks for having me on. This is
Yeah.
such a rich conversation. I'm glad we had it.
Yeah. Well, if anybody out there is listening, CEO or business owner, or if you know one that you suspect might be engaging in some doom loop activities and could use that person in their corner, a coach, a mentor, feel free to reach out to us.
If you like this, please subscribe to our podcast.